We continue with the 17th chapter of the book of Yirmiyahu, Chatat Yuda Ktuva, Be'et Barzel Batziporen, Shamir, Charusha Luach Libamul Karnot Mizbechotehem. The guilt of Yehuda, it's inscribed with a stylus of iron, right? It's so bad. It's a stylus of iron engraved with an adamant point on the tablet of their hearts and on the horns of their altars, right? It's not something that can easily be erased. Tizkor Beinehem Mizbechotam Vashereim Al Eitzranan. While their children remember all of their idolatry, I'll give ot hagavahot on the high mountains, right? We place something on the high mountains, the most important thing. What do they place upon those mountains? Idolatry. Harari basadech elcha kol otzrotecha lavazetein, b'motecha bechatat bechol givulecha. Because of your sins, right? Your shrines throughout your borders, I will make your rampart a heap in the field, right? So this was your high place, and it's going to be a heap in the field, and all your treasures a spoil. Vishamatita uvecha minachlatcha, asher natati lach v'avanticha et oivecha ba'aretz asher lo yadata ki eish kedachtem be'api ad olam tukad. And right, you will forfeit due to your own couch, your inheritance. You will become slaves in the land you have never known, because you have caused my wrath, and it will burn. And here we're going to start with some more well-known phrases. You'll see, at least here in this first pasuk, Ko amar Adonai, Arur hagever asher yiftach ba'adam, v'sam basar zro'o min Adonai yasur libo. God says, "Cursed is the man who trusts in mortals, who makes mere flesh his strength and turns his thoughts from God." What's the problem? You should be trusting in God. You should be listening to God. Don't try to make an alliance with the Egyptians because the Babylonians are coming. Don't try to make an alliance with the other empires. And this is, of course, a theme that we've seen not in Yirmiyahu so much, but a ton in Yeshaya. And Yirmiyahu is replacing it here. V'haya ka'ar ba'arava v'lo yireh ki avoto v'shachan chareirim ba'midbar eretz melecha v'lo teisheh. He will be like a bush in the desert, which does not sense the coming of good because it's scorched in a barren land without inhabitant. Now, as opposed to that, where you don't see anything, and you're going to be all around, everything that's around you is a scorched land. Baruch hagever asher yiftach ba'Adonai, v'haya Adonai miftacho. Blessed is the man who trusts in God, whose trust is in God alone. And of course, that is a well-known phrase, been made in song, said in Birkat Hamazon and other places. I think that just most people that you speak to would tell you that we somehow fall out in the middle, right? We may trust and rely upon God, but we don't rely upon God exclusively. That would not be sort of the smartest thing to do, to not have any hishtadlus is the word, not to try to get things done and not to rely upon other people to help us. But in terms of the big questions of life, saying here you should trust in God. And if you're like that, and if you trust in God, you will be like a tree planted by waters, phrase you may know from Tehillim, sending forth its roots by a stream. It does not sense the heat. Its leaves are always fresh, has no worry in a year of drought. It does not cease to yield fruit. Akov halev mikol, ve'anushu mi yeda enu. Most devious is the heart. It is perverse. Who can understand it? Ani Adonai choker lev bochen klayot. I, God, I can understand the heart. I can search through your minds. V'latest ish kedarkav kefrim ma'alav. And with proper fruit, right, I can repay people. I understand what people are doing. So I'll know if you are relying upon God, trust in me, or I know if you're trying to get somebody else. Korei dagar v'lo yalad. Oseh osher v'lo v'mishpat. B'chatzi yamav ya'azvenu v'achrito yenaval. Like a bird, maybe a partridge, hatching what she did not lay. So are those who gain wealth by unjust means. In midlife, it will leave them, and in the end, they will be seen as fools and as sort of criminals. Naval is worse than the word I would say, a fool. And return to the throne of glory, our sacred shrine. And here we have another more well-known verse, Mikveh Yisrael Adonai, Kolos Vecha Yevoshu. V'surai ba'eretz yikatevu ki azvu makor mayim chayim et Adonai. Oh, hope of Israel, the mikveh, right? Kaveh means to hope, The word mikvah. Mikvah is a hope. It's a renewal. You're starting again. You're going back into the water, right? All who left you will be put to shame. Those in the land who turn from you will be doomed, for they have left God. They've left the fountain of life. And this phrase is known in part because it's used by Rabbi Akiva. And Rabbi Akiva in the Gemara in Masechet Yoma says, Ashreichem Yisrael, how praiseworthy are you, Israel? Who do you purify yourself with in front of God? As it says, V'zarachti alechem ma'im torim mutartem, and then he quotes our verse, Mikveh Yisrael. And he says, just like a mikvah comes and it purifies the impure, so God purifies Israel. Rabbi Akiva takes this verse a little bit out of context, but the hope is that, right, the purification here, getting rid of the wicked and then returning to the righteous, will help Bnei Yisrael. Excuse me. And then another phrase, number 14, we're up to Pasuk Yudal, Rafa'eni Adonai ve'rafeh Hosheni vivasheh ki tilati ata. We know this phrase in a slightly different way in the plural, because this is, of course, the bracha of Rifa'enu. We daven in the plural. Here, Yirmiyahu, saying, heal me, eternal one. Let me be healed. Save me and let me be saved, for you are my glory. And the Anshe Knesset Gdola, our rabbis use this verse as the bracha for health in Shmon Esrei. Again, it's Rifa'enu Hashem v'nei rafeh, Hoshienu v'nivasheh, ki tilatenu ata. So they just change it to the plural, but it's this exact verse. Hinei hema omrim elai hayei dvar Adonai yavona. Because the people, they come to me, see, and they say, well, when's it going to happen? You say everything's going to be destroyed. Let's see if it happens. Right? They don't believe him. Vanilo atzti mi ro'eh acharecha. V'yom anush lo hit aveti ata yadata motzas vatay nochach panecha haya. But I'm not hiding, right? I'm a shepherd in your service. It's not that I want this to happen, right? You know that, God, I don't want that to happen. Al tieli lemichta. Don't cause to dismay me. Machsiata biomra. You're my refuge in the day of calamity, right? I'm the one saying all the bad words, but heal me, God. Help me, God. I've already revealed that there are people who want to kill Yirmiyahu. Their plots against him. Yevoshu wrote Fai v'ala evosha ani yechatu hema v'ala echater ani havi aleim yom ra'o mishneshi baron shov rain. Let my persecutors, be shamed, and let me not be shamed. Let them suffer, bring disaster to them and shatter with them. Okay, and now we have response. Kol amar Adonai Elai. Haloch v'amarata b'shar b'nei ha'am asher yavo v'ol malchei Yuda v'asher yetzuvo u'v'chol sharei Yerushalayim. So Yirmiyahu is worried. He's scared. What does God tell him to do? Go stand in the gate where the kings of Judah enter and by which they go forth. Right, you're going to be in a prominent place. V'amarta aleihem, and say to them as follows: Shemu dvar Adonai malchei Yuda v'chol yeshvei Yerushalayim ha'ba'im b'shar ha'mayla. And say to the people, everybody who goes through these gates, including you, Mr. King, listen to what I have to say. Kol amar Adonai, hishamru b'nafshotechem. God says, guard yourselves. V'al tisu masa b'yom ha'shabbat. And don't, right, carry burdens on Shabbat. V'avetem b'sharei Yerushalayim. Bring them through the gates of Jerusalem. Lo totzio masa mibatechem b'yom ha'shabbat v'chol melacha lo ta'asu v'kidashtem et yom ha'shabbat kasher tziveti et avotechem. Don't carry out burdens. Sounds like the issue here is that they're doing business on Shabbat. Interestingly, Yeshaya, when he talked about Shabbat back in the 56th or 58th chapter, he talked about it more from a social justice perspective. That's one of the things we know about Shabbat. Your servant shouldn't work. Your animal should take the day off. Everybody gets the day off. Yirmiyahu here is talking about seemingly not doing business. Keep the day as holy. Don't carry your burdens. Don't, right? That's not what you should be doing. Velo shamu, velo hitu et oznam. But they didn't listen. They didn't turn their ear towards him. Vayakshu et arpam levilti shimoa ulevilti kachat musar. But they remained stiff-necked. They wouldn't listen. They wouldn't take the chiding. They wouldn't take the instruction from Yirmiyahu. V'hayam shamo at tishmu elaynu umadona. Levilti havi masa b'sharei ha'ir azot b'yom ha'shabbat u'lekadesh yom ha'shabbat levilti asod bo kol melacha. And God says, but if you listen to me, if you don't do business, you don't bring your burdens, you're not carrying everything with you, but you make the Sabbath day holy, uvo v'sharei ha'ir azot melachim v'sarim yoshvim al kisei David rochim ba'rechav v'asusim heima v'sarim ish Yuda v'yoshvei Yerushalayim v'ashvai ha'ir azot lolam. Then the gates of the city, right? What will happen? The kings who will sit upon the throne will be the kings of David. with their officers riding on chariots and horses, and all of the city being here, right? Keep Shabbat. Seemingly, even though there's so many other messages in this book, so it's hard to believe that this would have been enough. And destruction won't happen. And the people come from all over, from Yehuda, from the lands of Binyamin, from the Shfela, from the north, from the south. They'll bring burnt offerings to God. However, but if you don't listen to me to sanctify the Sabbath, but rather continue to carry on your burdens, do your own work. And then I will, what's going to happen? Then Jerusalem is going to be destroyed. Its gates are going to be set on fire, and it will not be extinguished. And so here, it's seemingly a challenging chapter in terms of all of a sudden, Shabbat is the big issue. We talked about idolatry. We talked about, God's really upset. Bnei Israel don't trust in God, and they don't seem to treat each other well. But here we veer into a different issue, an issue of Shabbat. And, two things. One is, again, the difference of the conception of how Shabbat is important. Here it seems to be they're doing business. They're not listening and making the day holy. Yeshai was much more concerned with the social justice aspect, giving people the day off, not enriching yourselves on the back of the people who you sort of enslave. And that's one. And the second thing, if you just think about these verses, if you think about Israel and the questions about which road should be closed and whether cars should be allowed, you look at these verses, and this is one of the places where the Haredim look at and say, you see, we have to make Shabbat holy. And Yirmiyahu goes into the public spaces. And if the public spaces aren't holy, then heaven forbid, look what's going to happen. So I don't know if that's, the full way of reading that verse, but, just to think about it in the context of some of the questions that come up in modern day Israel.